Hello and welcome to Revenge of the Drive-In. It's been a while since we've had an episode out, so apologies for that. And this should be our Halloween release, and of course we are featuring 0 horror films. Unfortunately, that's the luck of the draw with the random number generator. Our next episode would be good for that, but we've got Sonatine, the early 90s Japanese yakuza classic from director and star Takeshi Kitano, previously featured on this podcast in Battle Royale. And we have the 1982, I'll say sex comedy. It was less of a sex comedy than I was expecting, but the film Splitz, directed by Dominic Paris. I'm your host, Patrick, and here I am joined by
Jim. Hello, everybody. Hello, Patrick. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm good. It's been a while since we've recorded, I think, on two movies that I had never seen before. And I didn't know too much of what to expect with either. I knew a little bit about Sonatine. It's got a good reputation. It's regarded as a classic film by some. It almost like verging on art house territory. And then Splitz I knew absolutely nothing about. And I was watching it. It was during the first commercial break on Tubi, during the first of 17,000 Little Caesars ads that I saw. It comes back from it, and it says PG-13. And I'm like, oh no, it's not even a sex comedy. I'm going to say Tubi lied. That is not a PG-13 film. I can't imagine.
Well, it was when it originally came out, it was PG-13, I think.
What?
And then it was re-released with a PG-13 designation, and then later, I think
Why was it ever re-released?
It was like re-released on DVD or something, which I don't know why. I don't know how many people actually watched this. And then I think when they released it again, or some other studio got their little hands on it, and they gave it an R rating, which makes sense.
Yeah, who the hell knows with that movie? But Jim, you're going to start us off with Sonatine anyways, so...
I am Sonatine. As you said, it's directed and starring Takeshi Kitano, famous for Takeshi's Castle, one of my favorite TV shows, but the Spike TV dub.
To be fair, he's famous for normal things in Japan, isn't he? Kind of like a movie star or famous director.
Yeah.
Like in America, if people know him, it's from that or Battle Royale, which is one of those foreign movies that's got some traction in the States.
Apparently, I was reading up about him, and he had traveled to LA in the early 2000s to shoot a movie called Brother. I have no idea what it's about.
Charlie
I think
Brown
it's
story.
Oh, stop it. But it's like some gangster flick, and apparently it didn't do that well, and he wasn't really happy about the film, and he has never made another movie outside of Japan since.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so he hasn't even had a cameo in a Tarantino movie. But, I mean, just random Japanese stars of movies that Tarantino likes will just pop up in a movie. And by the way, Tarantino's repaid the favor. Tarantino appears in Takashi Miike's Sukiyaki Western Django for some reason.
Oh.
Yeah. We'll be getting to that later this season, believe it or not. Yeah.
Well, also, Tarantino likes this movie.
I mean, I would assume he does, but...
Yeah, and I think he has lots of praise for Kitano. I didn't see anything. There's interviews where he speaks about this movie, and I was like, I'm not watching
You're just assuming.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, because, I mean, if Tarantino's going to talk about him, it's a Tarantino-esque movie. I mean, it's as in, it's a movie you'd know he'd like. You know? The soundtrack, Patrick, did you like the soundtrack for this movie?
I liked the score a lot. The opening theme, when that comes in, I'm like, oh, I am on board with this. I don't know how you'd describe it. It was kind of synthy, kind of electronic, sort of video game-y, but really well produced.
My favorite score was, or even musical sting, is when that fisherman assassin kills a bunch of people and then just starts walking along the beach to this lovely kind of synthy.
Yeah, lovely is
Japanese
a good word.
Music,
this was kind of calming, cool but calming music.
Yeah. Well, it won the Japanese Academy Award for Music in '94. And it was also awarded, and I'm going to butcher this, it was awarded the Critics' Choice at the Festival du Film Policier de Cognac.
Okay, so the
Never heard
score
of
is
that
alcoholic.
festival, but yeah, everybody was sloshed. Before we get into the actual movie, the title. So I didn't even know what I thought. Sonatine was a neat name.
Yeah, I forgot to look up what it meant.
So Sonatine is
It's
comes
my
from the
favorite
German or
Beatles song
French.
written by George Harrison. Sonatine in the way she moves.
You're an idiot. But it does have to do with music because it means little sonata.
Okay.
And Kitano said that he picked this name for the movie because a sonata has three clear sections, right? An exposition, a development, and a recapitulation.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I'm not super into music, but I remember this. And the ending of a sonata, it just kind of restates the musical themes from the beginning, which is a lot like this movie. So that's why he went with Sonatine, Little Sonata. And he said, and I quote, "When learning the piano, when the learner gets to sonatinas, they have to decide where they want to go, whether it be to classical, jazz, or popular music, marking the point of crucial decision-making." This refers to the character Murakawa.
This movie's all about what are you doing next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how it's all about how the main character is going to proceed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting, and it's a word that I've never heard before. I think the most interesting part of this, though, is the poster, which I thought it was a parrotfish on the poster.
Yeah, it looks like it.
But apparently it's a Napoleon fish. Kitano said that he chose this fish for the poster, which has a big spear running through it, because it looked beautiful, and it was a real contrast of a beautiful fish being speared. But he also said that they used to be very common in South Japan, but their numbers have declined. So I looked it up, and you know why they've declined, Patrick?
Overfishing?
Overfishing and loss of habitat. And they were very plentiful off the coast of Okinawa, but now they're endangered.
Loss of habitat, I'm just picturing China making all their artificial islands. And
exactly, on these coral reefs, exactly. But Kitano didn't say this, but it's also an interesting choice of fish because by the mid-90s, the Japanese government was putting in all kinds of anti-yakuza laws. And I think from 90, it was something from 92 to 94. There were, I think in 92, there were 60,000 yakuza members across the country. By 94, it had dropped by 10,000 after these laws.
Okay, so their version of RICO or whatever, the racketeering laws that we have in the U.S.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You hear that talked about in some of the gangster movies, like this in The Sopranos, stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was essentially the same thing. They're like, you can't hustle people, you can't hassle them, you can't force them to give you money, etc., etc. So this is a period, too, where the Yakuza are dying. And by this point in Japan, they still exist, but they're very few and far between, and they're all old men. You don't really have new Yakuza members joining, because it's just, you can't do anything. And then it's
not profitable.
Exactly, and the police are really cracking down on you, especially today. So it is interesting that he chose this fish, because loss of habitat for Murakawa and the Yakuza, but we can explore those themes later after we actually talk about the movie. We're introduced to our two main characters, Murakawa and his right-hand man, who I think is named Ken, and Murakawa is an enforcer for a larger Tokyo Yakuza gang or clan, but he runs his own clan/gang, the Murakawa gang.
Yeah, he's got his own lieutenant, stuff like that, underboss or whatever.
Yeah. And when we meet these two guys, they're trying to shake down a guy who runs a mahjong parlor. But the owner's like, fuck you, I'm not paying any money. You're Yakuza, I'm not Yakuza, I'm not paying any money to you. Fuck off. So Murakawa leaves, but that's because he has other business to do. He's got a meeting with his Yakuza boss, and I don't remember the exact way in which this happened, but there's two meetings. The first meeting, he's with the boss's right-hand man.
I feel like the first meeting is about how he's going to have a second meeting.
I think so, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the first meeting's with Takahashi, who's the big boss's right-hand man. And Takahashi says, hey, look, we gotta send you to Okinawa. There's some trouble down there between two clans, two gangs, and you're going. You're gonna get a group of people and go. And Murakawa's like, no, I'm not going. The last time there was an issue and I was sent out, I lost 3 of my guys. And Takahashi's like, well, this is how you gain territory. Now we're going to have another meeting with the big boss. So later that night, they have this meeting in this upscale, fancy Tokyo restaurant. The boss doesn't really say much. He's just kind of eating a melon, and he's letting Takahashi do most of the talking. It's in this scene that we see that Murakawa is unhappy, whether it be with life or his job. He doesn't like the idea of having to go down to Okinawa. He doesn't like the risks involved, and he publicly and loudly says, he's like, you're forcing me to do this. I don't want to go. You're the one making me go.
Yeah, the character actually reminded me a bit of his, I don't remember the name, but the character he played in, I think he was just called Takeshi in Battle Royale. Yeah. Because we don't really see any home life with Murakawa here, but in Battle Royale, he's like in charge of this thing or whatever. But the few glimpses we get of his home life, his personal life, he's just kind of miserable. And it's like all he has is his job where he watches teenagers murder each other. This movie, it's kind of like all he has is his yakuza life, and he doesn't even seem to be that happy with it, and he definitely doesn't want to go to Okinawa because he kind of suspects that it's a way for them to kill him. Or even if it's not like a literal way, like we're setting you up to die, it's just like I'm abandoning my job here that I'm pretty safe and comfortable with, and it's like something could happen,
Yeah, well, things are going well for him in Tokyo, right? He's made a name for himself. He's got his own territory.
Are they? I mean, they have, but like because they do mention that he's made a lot of money, and that he's like pretty comfortable here. There's a discussion of retirement, and I think someone says, maybe it's his right hand man, it says like, you're too rich to be working this. So apparently he's done very well for himself, but at the same time we see that in that opening scene, like it kind of feels like he's lost power though too, because that one guy, the non-Yakuza guy who speaks up for himself and just kind of like, Murakawa's relatively powerless, at least in that scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting because, I mean, popping back to this scene in the restaurant here, as he's leaving, he's got a call because his guys went and captured the mahjong parlor guy that spoke up against him at the beginning of the movie. But as he's leaving the restaurant, he notices that Takahashi goes to the bathroom, and he follows him in and just beats the ever-loving shit out of him. And leaves him, like, knocked out on the floor. Yeah, to a point where
it almost seemed like he died, because I don't think he did, but there's someone trying to get into the bathroom, and his like body is propped up against the door, and he like starts to kind of get up, and then he just falls back down. It almost seems like, okay, maybe he's dead, but I have a feeling he probably isn't. But
no, well, he comes back later as well. So
that's right, yeah.
And then him and Ken hop in the car, and that's when we have that conversation that you spoke about, where he's like, I want to retire. I'm not happy. I don't want to be doing this anymore. And that's when Ken says, well, you're too rich. You should retire. And this conversation kind of carries on to their next stop, where they go to what I assume is like Tokyo Bay or something, and they've got the mahjong parlor man tied up and hanging from like a crane.
Yeah.
And they're just going to torture him until he pays them their dues.
Very licensed to kill.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Yeah, Mr. James Bond experience over there. Yeah, he accidentally kills the mahjong guy. They keep on holding him underwater for like a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then while Ken and Murakawa are discussing the dangers of this Okinawa trip and how they think something fishy is going on, Murakawa says, oh, hey, oops, it's been over 3 minutes, right? And Ken goes, oh, yeah, it has. Bring him up. And the guy's dead. And there's no expression at all on Murakawa's face, and he just says, oops, well, that's okay, it didn't matter anyways. Hide the body. There's no expression on anybody else's face, but like, Takashi's playing this so well, where he just seems so depressed constantly. Like there's nothing, there's no life in his eyes.
It's not very emotive, but in a way that makes it seem like he's giving a lot of emotion, if that makes any sense. He's very kind of dry and lifeless, but you feel that's like I would compare it to like Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate. Like that's someone watching that movie without like a good understanding of it might say like, oh, this guy sucks, he's bad, he's not showing any emotion. It's like, no, that's kind of the point of the character. The character's directionless. He's just kind of confused about like things. And I thought it gets better and better throughout the movie too, when you see kind of the more he like continues to get unhinged, but he still gets like this, it's still kind of the same performance, but it like keeps getting better, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and so here he's just so depressed, and you can see it in his face. Like nothing brings him joy. Not even.
He's got just kind of a sad face in general, too.
You're right, he does. Yeah, except for when he's on Takeshi's castle, he's always laughing.
Which I haven't seen. So.
The next day, after they kill this guy by accident, Murakawa assembles 6 men, and they fly on down to Okinawa. They're met at the airport by the Nakamatsu clan. And the guy who's running, who's like this like enforcer, I think his name is Uichi or something. And he's got a couple other guys with him. Yeah. The big bearded guy. They take them to like this makeshift office and stuff that they've set up for the Tokyo guys to come down. But pretty quickly it's revealed that the issue between the clans isn't really a problem, and it's over one of the Nakamatsu guys shooting and not even killing an Anan clan guy over something silly. And Uichi, he's actually surprised that the Tokyo Yakuza even sent anybody down to sort this out, because as far as he's concerned, it's like a non-issue. And then there's like a scene where they fire like a bullet through a window, the rival clan, and he's like, oh, that's just a way of them saying hi or whatever, Yeah,
in most of the rest of the movie, it seems like this like middle portion is kind of just Takeshi and friends kind of just fucking around on the beach, and the film feels very like directionless, but for whatever reason, I found these scenes the most engaging. It is just, I think it's like you continue to, it comes down to the performance. You continue to see he's doing all these things to keep himself entertained. They're playing pranks on people. They're making them fall into holes on the beach.
Yeah.
He's playing Russian roulette with his friends, where it's not revealed until after he takes what would be the final shot that it was actually empty. Like all these scenes, they're amusing, but they also go to show kind of like the dissatisfaction, I guess, he has with like life and at this point work too.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because right before we get there, the whole reason that like half of this movie takes place on the beach is because the Tokyo guys and the Nakamatsu guys are attacked. Their makeshift office is blown up, and several guys are killed. And Uichi says, okay, there's now officially a war. War is happening. We got to get out of here. They go to a bar, and they are ambushed by the Anan gang, who just like start shooting people in the bar. And like, the Tokyo guys lose some people. But in the center of it all, you have Murakawa standing there, totally emotionless, not even dodging the bullets, just standing there, just like firing his gun back. He kills them all. They decide to head out to a beach house that's owned by somebody's brother, who's in like Osaka. So most of them, or like half of the movie, takes place here. And you know what I think is so engaging about these scenes, Patrick? It's the only time that you see Murakawa smile and laugh.
Yeah, there. Like particularly the Russian roulette scene, when it's not revealed until it's over that he was just messing around, and then he's like having a laugh about it. But then you also have that dream he has where he dreams of the entire scenario, and it's like the same thing shot for shot, except he actually does shoot himself. So it's like,
yeah,
it's not, he's still not like happy with things. There's still like a pain underneath the surface of all of the fun he's having.
No, exactly. And I also think it's funny because when they show up to this beach house, they all kind of like take their suits off. And up to this point in the movie, Murakawa had been wearing like a navy blue suit. And when he gets to the beach house, he takes his suit jacket off and he's just got his white shirt out. And it's, it's kind of billowy, kind of flowy. He looks like he's on vacation. And then Uichi has one of his guys that he trusts bring like a suitcase full of clothes. And then all the guys that are stuck there at this beach house are, rifling through the clothes, and like they're putting on like nice Hawaiian shirts and stuff. Really tropical kind of vacation-y wear.
Yeah, one of them's got almost a Magnum PI shirt.
Yeah, and I think that's Ken, right? Because then Murakawa keeps making fun of his shirt. He's like, that's an ugly shirt. And like his right-hand man is also out enjoying things. Like Ken is like relaxing, he's laughing, he's taking part in all these games and stuff like that. But as time goes on, you really do get the sense that that Murakawa is treating this like a vacation, and he doesn't really want to go back to work.
Yeah.
And that kind of plot line sort of stems out of, or sort of comes out of, rather, this assassin that's sent to kill the Nakamatsu guys.
Well, and before we get to that, there is a woman that gets involved, and
yes,
what happens is he stops her from getting raped on the beach. He kills the guy, and then she just kind of hangs out with them. She's also like on vacation with them. I don't think we ever get her name? I think she's just kind of woman.
I believe.
Oh, she does have a name? Okay. Oh, and that's another kind of amusing scene when he's driving around and we don't see him, and it's not even like he gets in an accident. He just like veers off the road a little bit, and he's like barely off the road when we see the other characters go and like get the car started and stuff. It's like, but there's jokes made about how he's like a terrible driver and stuff.
Yeah, and this woman who watched this would-be rapist get murdered in front of her, and then also had to walk home the morning after, comes back, hangs out, gets into this grass crash with Morikawa, and as he's driving her back into the city, into Okinawa, like she just keeps on coming back out, and it's kind of revealed that she's in love with Morikawa, and it's hard to know if he shares the same affection. I don't think he does. There's a scene where it starts pouring rain and he's out fishing and she's watching him fish, and they're running under these mangroves and she takes her top off. And he responds with something like, "Public indecency is always fun. Ha ha ha." You know? But like, I don't know if it's supposed to be implied that they had sex. I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I didn't get the impression that this was particularly requited. I also, like, the woman gets a lot of screen time. I didn't think anyways that it was all that important that she really liked him. Like, she just kind of hangs out with him. Like, I kind of saw it as they're just friends. Oh, see, I saw it as, well, because there was even a line about her coming back so often because she likes Morikawa, and there's, so I guess to skip ahead, because they're all just hanging out on the beach. Well, it's also things. Like that the other characters don't know that he stopped the rape and killed the guy too. So it's like they kind of might just view it as she really, like, they don't understand, for lack of a better term, the bond that the two characters might have, or the bond that the feelings that she might have towards him. Maybe it's not 100% love, and it's more just like gratefulness. Yeah, that's a possibility. Essentially what's happening is they're hiding out on the beach, waiting for word from Takahashi from Tokyo to see what's going on between these two gangs in Okinawa and whether or not they're getting called back to Tokyo. Eventually, Uichi shows up, and he says, "Hey, I got a call from my boss. I need to talk to Morikawa. Do you know where he is?" And he's talking to Ken, and Ken's sitting there. By this point, Ken's over this whole beach vacation thing. He has changed out of his Hawaiian shirt, and he's wearing more like a business kind of shirt. Island Niles has been left behind. Yeah. I don't even know if you get that reference, but it sounds good though. Yeah, well, I don't need to explain it. I'll just use a clip of it or whatever on YouTube. Okay. Good. I'll laugh anyways. But this is when Ken says, he says, "I don't know where he is. Maybe he's with his girlfriend. His new girlfriend." And I think at this point, people have kind of figured out that she's into him, even though he's not really into her. Uichi says, "Okay, fine, you can come then, and because we have to talk to my boss." And I forget what the boss's name is. Oh, it's Mr. Nakamatsu. Doi. So they meet Nakamatsu on a roadside, on like this beautiful roadside with like this beautiful flowering bush in the background. He says, "We're here to discuss the truce. Takahashi has apparently brokered a truce, but it's under one condition. It's that the Nakamatsu clan has to disband. They have to step down. They have to give up their territory to the Anon clan." And Mr. Nakamatsu, he says, "Hey, I want to retire anyways." He says, "Well, this woman I'm with is pregnant, so I'm definitely ready to retire." And he says, "Uichi, I want you to take over. Now, whether it be you kill me or just take my territory, I don't care." Ken says, "Hey, what's going on with the Morikawa clan?" Nakamatsu says, "Oh, I heard about that too. You guys are banned, or like banished from Tokyo, or whatever." So our fellas hop into a car, and they drive away, but then almost immediately after, we see all of the yakuza guys that were left on the roadside. They get gunned down by this assassin dressed as a fisherman, who we also saw briefly earlier. He was poking around the beach house and watching some of the guys playing frisbee on the beach and stuff. But speaking of frisbee, Morikawa, the Miyuki, and the Nakamatsu guy that's there, and then there's also this other guy who's been here the whole movie. He's a young guy. He's part of the Morikawa gang that he brought down from Tokyo.
these two guys, the Nakamatsu guy and the Murakama guy, they're playing frisbee on the beach or whatever. They're trying to shoot it, and then this fishing assassin shows up, and he just blows a hole in the Nakamatsu guy's head and walks away. This is kind of like the end of that vacation period, because we cut to this interesting shot where you have the four characters left, minus Murakawa, on like this hill overlooking the beach, and they're all kind of standing there. They have emotionless faces, and they're all watching Murakawa on the beach by himself. He's still not wearing his suit jacket. He's throwing a frisbee up in the air, and he's trying to shoot it, and it's windy, and the ocean is rough behind him, and then he kind of turns and looks at everybody standing on the hill. And then we cut back to the guys on the hill, and Ken says, "That's it. It's over for Takahashi. We have to take him out." And then the next scene is Ken, Uichi, and Murakawa walking into a hotel, and Murakawa's got his suit jacket back on. So it's like, okay, vacation's over. Now it's back to business. It was so weird because it's almost like he never wanted to leave that beach. You know what I mean, Patrick? Like,
yeah, he bounces back surprisingly easily after the core conflict of the movie. Basically, is just like, I don't want to work. I want to just. He's like Gen Z. He's just out there having a good time. He's like Gen Z, or how other people have described millennials. You know, every older generation thinks the younger generation doesn't want to work. But then the switch just flips. Mm-hmm. And he's back to business as usual. He's going to try and go kill, what's-his-face?
Takahashi.
Yeah.
It's kind of this neat scene where they go to this hotel and they knock on this guy's door, Takahashi, and it's not the right Takahashi. Mm-hmm. And then one of them makes the comment, well, clearly he wouldn't use his own name for registering for a room. They get into this elevator, some people are getting on, and then Murakawa looks up and he says, "Takahashi," and he's standing there in the elevator. And then there's just like a brief little gunfight, and both Ken and Uichi are shot dead, and so are Takahashi's guys. And even I think Uichi has some of his fingers blown off his hand, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so some weird shots in that scene. I mean, it's an elevator, it's a confined space, but it kind of seemed like just Murakawa was the one that shot everyone. It kind of seemed like even his men were kind of shot by him, at least to me. I don't know. Maybe,
yeah, well, I know, because you're right, because what had happened was, like, when the guy turned around, he immediately shot at Ken.
I think they break the 180-degree rule here. I think that's what's thrown me off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, yeah, they would have to.
You almost have to in that tight a space.
Yeah. It was a neat scene. It was almost like both Uichi and Ken were protecting Murakawa. It's like, throughout this movie, he keeps on wanting to die. And I think you can kind of infer that from his dream sequence there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he keeps on surviving, no matter the odds. Whether it be him cheating at Russian roulette or standing in an elevator and having his two buddies protect him, whether they knew it or not, But yeah, so everybody dies except for Takahashi and like two random people in the elevator and Murakawa himself. And he leads Takahashi out, puts him in a car, drives him to the ocean side. He kind of starts torturing him. He's trying to get information out of him. He's shooting him in the leg. And it turns out that the big boss in Tokyo had always wanted to align with the Anan clan. And this squabble between the Okinawa clans was the perfect excuse to wipe the Nakamatsu clan out. And then the Murakawa clan was banished because they were doing very well financially, and the boss was just being a greedy asshole, and he wanted them out of the picture. So now it's just Murakawa and like this young kid that he's been with throughout the movie. Murakawa gives him the gun and says, "Okay, now it's your turn to go question him. Learn this job, And he goes, "No, not with that." And he opens the trunk and pulls out this like pink duffel bag full of weapons, and then reaches in and grabs like a firebomb and throws it into the car, and the whole thing explodes, which is pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. The two fellas go back to the beach house. Miyuki says to Murakawa, she says, are you going to be coming back? And he says, maybe. And then there's kind of I don't really understand the point of this scene, but he's standing there holding like this machine gun, right? Because he's going to go shoot up this big yakuza meeting. And Miyuki says, "Can I fire that?" or something? And he's like, "Sure." And then she just starts firing off over the dunes, and he's just standing there, totally emotionless,
And I obviously know the scene you're talking about. I think it's more just kind of the casual nature of Murakawa. But I think in this case, too, this shows that, I know you said the name, woman, that she doesn't understand the importance of what he's about to do. And in part, it's partially or maybe entirely his fault because he hasn't really communicated with her that he's in danger, and maybe because he doesn't care that much. But I think there was just like a disconnect between her and the actual plot at this point.
Would you say she's lost the plot?
she never knew the plot. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
she never knows. She never knows. Does she even know these people are yakuza? She just kind of they're just vacationers to her.
Yeah, well, even when that assassin guy shows up and kills that Nakamatsu guy in front of Murakawa and Miyuki, like, he doesn't like move at all because he's just totally emotionless and he doesn't give a shit. But she's sitting next to him and is also totally emotionless. And you'd think if like a random woman saw a guy get shot right between the eyes in front of her, you think that would be a little stressful. But she's just sitting there, hanging out.
Yeah, I almost wonder, and I mean, I wasn't thinking this when I was watching it, but now that we're talking about it, I wonder if there's like he doesn't care if he dies because he kind of wants to die. I wonder if there's like she doesn't really care that much if she dies because she thinks she easily could have died, and this is like a second chance on life, and she's not gonna. I'm referring to the rapist.
Yeah.
If that she's like, whatever happens, and in a weird way that those two are a great fit, even though they don't quite see everything eye to eye. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to watch it again to, I think, fully flesh out my ideas on what she's doing in the movie and what her character is all about. But after a first watch, I just think she's kind of confusing, just because I don't know why she's here. If she's not a love interest, then what's going on, kind of, you know?
Yes, I mean, she's like she's there as a potential love interest, and maybe that this is something that could get Murakawa out of his "I want to die" funk.
Well, exactly.
I think I said earlier, this movie's about like, what are you going to do next? And he never takes the opportunity that she represents that might be the best thing for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well, and speaking of that, we're coming pretty close to the end of the movie. Murakawa and the kid, they drive to this big yakuza meeting where I guess the guy up from Tokyo, he's come down, and the Okinawa clan, the Anan clan, they're there, they're having a big meeting. Well, the kid had rigged the lights to go off at a certain point. So him and Murakawa are sitting in the car, and the kid's like, okay, the lights are going to go off in 10 minutes. I'm coming in with you. And Murakawa says, no, you're not. And the kid's like, okay. Just fill the car up on your way back, okay? And Murakawa kind of smirks. The lights go off, he grabs his machine gun, he heads in. And I really like this scene because you don't see... Like, there's really not a lot of action or gore in this movie as far as kind of like gangster movies go. You know, you don't see a lot of people getting... Well, actually, I guess you do see a lot of people getting shot.
Well, what's interesting is like by the time we hit the end of the movie, like, yeah, we saw a lot of people get shot. It's never exciting. It's never shot in a way that like makes you feel any kind of excitement. Everything, even the moments of violence of this movie, feel like existential and almost like dreamlike.
Well, and it's also matter of fact, right? It's like guy got shot. That's it.
Yeah, there's not a ton of style to it, I think I think I agree.
Well, and except for this, there's some style behind this, though it's not about the people getting shot. I think it's more surreal to shoot an action scene this way, where Murakawa goes in, you don't really see him shoot anybody. You see the muzzle flare light up the conference room or whatever it is in this hotel, and
you see some of it from the outside, from the ground level.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And you can see the light like bouncing off the roofs and hoods of the cars and stuff in the parking lot, all these gangster cars that have pulled up, which are all like Mercedes and Cadillac and stuff like that. And then occasionally it cuts to the interior of the hotel and you see people just getting shot and falling. And then it'll cut to Murakawa's face, and again, totally emotionless, holding this machine gun, just gunning everybody down. And that's it. He presumably leaves, and the next day we see Miyuki. She's waiting on the roadside for Murakawa to appear over the top of this coastal hill. And we, the audience, know that he's made it back alive because we see the car driving along. But then, like, we see it all from Miyuki's perspective. Now we, as the audience, and Miyuki are waiting for the car to crest that hill, but it never does. And after a while, we cut back to the car. And our first thought is, or at least my first thought, was that maybe Murakawa succumbed to some kind of an injury or something. Or
that he's a bad driver, that he just got in an accident again. That's exactly, a possibility too. It's the same hill. It is. If it's not the exact same hill, I think it is. It's set up in a very similar way to that comedy scene earlier. The shot composition is very similar.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. When we do cut to the car, we see that he's relatively unscathed. And he's pulled over to the side of the road, like right before the apex of that hill. And then he just pulls out a pistol and he shoots himself in the head. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. You know?
Well, yeah, and then we do get the reveal that she's watching it happen.
Well, she isn't watching it happen. She's waiting for him to come over the hill. So she doesn't see the car because he's pulled over before the crest of that hill.
Oh, I thought she did. I thought she was, like, surprisingly close to it happening.
No, she was over the hill, so she's still waiting for him to show up, and he stopped right before the top of that hill, right before he made it over, right before, Patrick, he could have made that decision to finally live a happy life or find some happiness.
I mean, he made the decision. He's not going to do it. I mean, that's what the point of this is.
No, exactly.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. But, I mean, he could have... I think the whole point of this is, like, he's so depressed. Like, he's severely depressed because of the way his life has gone. And
it's like he had to watch Splitz.
Yeah, that was rough. But yeah, he's like severely depressed, and his whole life has revolved around the yakuza, and he loses all of his colleagues / friends. He loses his territory. He kills his boss and stuff. But he wants out of the game. Like he already said, like, I don't want to be part of the yakuza anymore. I want to retire. There's literally nothing left for him, and that one thing that you mentioned earlier that could be left for him, that could make him happy, is this woman. And he stops himself just short, like just before the top of this hill, just before she would have seen the hood of that car, and he kills himself.
But does he do it because he knows she's there, and he knows he can't make any excuses anymore?
Yeah, or, maybe he's like, oh, that dumb bitch, I don't want to have to spend the rest of my life with her. Stupid woman.
I mean, I would have said it less misogynistically, but I know what you mean, though. It's like, from his perspective, it's like he's maybe been able to, he knows she likes him. He's been able to kind of avoid it because he's at least has the facade of like, oh, I've got duty to do and all this stuff. And then even though he's mostly been avoiding his responsibilities, he's also been kind of avoiding her, at least emotionally. Mm-hmm. And have we hit a point where he can't use that as an excuse? He can't use the yakuza life as an excuse anymore. He's got to be with her or kill himself, and he would prefer the latter.
Yeah, and is it because he can't live with the decisions that he's made throughout his life?
Yeah, that's certainly on the table for most movies that end like this. I never got that impression with this movie.
I was tricked. I was totally tricked. I thought I was going to come onto this podcast and say, oh, this is one of those gangster movies that actually ends well for the main character.
Okay. And why did you think that? Was it because you liked the character and you actually wanted to see things work out for him? Or was it just like you felt that the movie was heading in that direction?
I felt that the movie was heading in that direction. I was surprised when we cut to the car and he was pulled over. And I was like, oh, what's he doing? Did he die? Maybe it isn't going to end happily. I liked this movie a lot, and I think it's because it was so depressing. I don't think I've ever seen a gangster movie like this.
I don't think I've ever seen a gangster movie that cares as little about the gangster storylines as this movie does. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes this movie very interesting. It's not my favorite movie ever. I did like it. I mentioned earlier my favorite scenes are when he and his friends are just kind of dicking around on the beach,
like with the fireworks.
Responsibilities. The fireworks, yeah, and he pulls out an actual gun when they're doing like a fireworks war, and he's like shooting at them. And I assume he's not aiming at them, but the way it's shot, like,
I know you're like, oh my god, he's gonna kill somebody. And I also like that Uichi guy, and every time he drinks, he wants to sing and dance, and he gets those other guys to dance, all dressed
up.
And
they practice, like, sumo wrestling. They build, like, they construct, they just, like, put sticks and rocks around in a circle, but a little sumo ring. And, yeah, it's just, like, it becomes, like, the middle of the movie, it's like a comedy. Mm-hmm. But it's like that, it's that dry, kind of depressing comedy that I tend to really like. I like those kind of movies more than I like wacky comedies. Like, I love the Alexander Payne movies like Sideways, Nebraska, comedies that have something to say dramatically and are sometimes kind of existentialist almost. And like, I'm not the biggest Wes Anderson fan. I tend to like his movies, but like Wes Anderson has that dry wit, and it's like not...
It's not like, over the top.
It's not Wayne's World. Or, I don't even know why I'm singling out Wayne's World, but it's not like that kind of comedy. Mm-hmm. It's not Austin Powers. It's not wacky, a joke every few seconds. And I tend to like those movies. I did think that, it could be a matter of translation, matter of culture. Like, the film didn't make me laugh a lot, but I did kind of enjoy that second act when it pretty much is a comedy. Takeshi Kitano's performance is great. We talked about his emotionless face like really works, and it is kind of nice to see him cut loose and kind of enjoy himself, but there's like still an edge to him enjoying himself because he's pulling out a gun during a firework fight, or he's playing Russian roulette. Like there's like a craziness there. Yeah, I enjoyed this movie. I did think it was interesting that all of the action, for lack of a better term, any of the yakuza stuff was just like kind of boring, and I think that was intentional.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was shot very plainly. There was nothing really exciting about it except for that last scene where we didn't see action.
The amount of times it just cuts to him and he's just like statically standing tall and like pointing a gun at the camera. It looked like Joe Pesci at the very end of Goodfellas, the recreation of the great train robbery scene. That was like every scene of him shooting. There was never like shooting on the move, like ducking behind cover. It was never any, this is not a John Woo film by any means.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting, and it's like, I don't know if I liked that, but it's definitely, the movie's trying to do something different. It's not trying to be a normal yakuza movie, a normal crime movie.
Yeah, and again, like, was he doing that, or were the action scenes shot that way because he was just so fed up with life and the yakuza and himself, and he was just hoping to get shot, and that's why he wasn't dodging
well, whether he's hoping to be shot or not, and there is like a kind of a suicidal, like, you ever see the first Lethal Weapon? Like, I can't remember if it's Riggs or Murtaugh, but the Mel Gibson character, he's like suicidal in that movie, and that's what makes him kind of like a great cop, is like he saves someone from like jumping to commit suicide because he himself is like kind of crazy and suicidal also. And there's a little bit of that, but it's also like the way those, again, action isn't really the right word, but the way those like gunfight scenes are shot does it reflects the character for sure, whether or not he's truly just not moving because he's kind of hoping to get shot, or it's just like there's that lackadaisicalness in even those scenes.
Yeah. All in all, it was, again, I really enjoyed the movie, and it was a different take on a gangster movie, especially a yakuza movie, which also we've seen. What was it? It wasn't. What was that other
Battles
yakuza
Without
movie?
Honor, Humanity,
Yeah,
or Dead or Alive.
Oh,
which are both like exciting, action-packed thrillers compared to this film.
Yes, yeah, and Battles Without Honor and Humanity. That one almost, I'm not going to say it romanticizes the Yakuza, but, like a lot of gangster movies kind of romanticize the idea of being part of the mob and having money and
in general, there is
stuff.
an argument, this is used all the time specifically with like violence and like war movies, is that there's a school of thought that anything being depicted on screen is being romanticized to a certain extent.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't quite buy that, but I do think certain movies, certain moments, even in movies that maybe don't overall do that, do kind of feel like, I don't know, it seems like they're trying to make this look cool. Like, I feel that way in a few scenes in Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan, considered by many to be an anti-war movie, it's as good as any movie in truly capturing the horrors of war. There's still a few moments in that movie where it's like, that's pretty cool, that's pretty badass. And it's like, I don't want to feel that way watching Saving Private Ryan, but I kind of do. And yeah, and then so like when it comes to like gangster movies too, it's like they do that too. But yeah, this movie, nothing about the gangster work seems cool or exciting or fun or badass. Even like Battles Without Honor and Humanity. Maybe this is just the 70s versus the early 90s, but like they had the cool suits, they looked cool. Here, he's got like a David Byrne suit at one point. It's just like a big baggy suit, and it's like, was that just 90s fashion? Like, nobody looks cool. Except for the Hawaiian shirts when they're just hanging around. Except for Magnum out there on the beach, Yeah,
it all just seems like a hassle for the characters.
An inconvenience, absolutely.
It's not something fun for these characters to be doing, to be going out and killing people. This is literally a life or death thing for them. They're on the run. Well,
but they don't treat it as such.
Half of the movie. They're having fun on the beach, but this is more of a pain for them. They can't go home. They can't shower.
Exactly.
They have to have all these weird Hawaiian shirts, which I liked all of them. And all of them are just waiting to go back home or to resume their normal lives. None of this has that rose-colored tint on the screen. Like, all of it just seems to be a hassle for all these characters.
Well, and there's with Murakawa too. It's like, does he even once he's on the beach and is like, I don't think he really wants to go back to his normal life. I think this is a movie
definitely not.
About a gangster whose conflict is he doesn't really want to be a gangster, but it's not due to any kind of ideological positions. It's not like, oh my God, I feel terrible at the people that I've killed or the people I've stolen from. It's just like, you know what? This is a pretty fun vacation. Like, I just want to hang out. He's doing his Island Niles thing once again, and it's weird. I don't often say this, and I should. It's not that I don't often feel this way, but it's like rarely important enough to bring up. I'm not 100% sure what this movie was trying to do. I do kind of feel like it was too smart for me. You know what I mean? Like, I think we've had a good discussion about a lot of different things in it, about the character, about some of the themes. Overall, I'm not sure what the goal was, because to me it kind of just boiled down to this is a gangster movie interrupted by a lighthearted comedy film, and the main character wants to stay in that lighthearted comedy film, but he also kind of wants to kill himself. It's just weird.
Yeah, if we just take this as a movie about a severely depressed man who's a member of a criminal organization who wants to kill himself, then that's all it is. You know, if we take
By the way, I was just thinking about this, but this is again, I don't. There are cultural differences, reasons why we shouldn't compare Yakuza to like American gangster movies and stuff like that. But at the same time, oftentimes similar stories. This is Tony Soprano. Tony Soprano, that series starts, and Jim, I don't know if you've seen it.
Only part of it.
I'm sure many of our listeners have, but that series starts. I think he has like a panic attack or like maybe even like a heart attack. But that series, he's seeing a psychiatrist throughout that series because he's just depressed. He's just depressed, and he has all these things. He has all these riches. He somewhat enjoys his gangster lifestyle, but he's just overall not happy with his life at the same time. And that's kind of what this was. And I wasn't thinking about that when I was watching it.
That is neat that you brought that up. And I mean, really, this is a tragic story, or at least a story about a tragic character who has all of the opportunities in the world to make himself happy, and he never does. And he dies a sad, depressed, lonely
he doesn't
man.
even want to.
No, exactly. But good movie.
All right, so let's talk about a film that I'm not going to compare it to The Sopranos in any way, shape, or form. And this is the movie Splitz. I've seen Tubi, IMDb, Wikipedia, I think say 1982. Letterboxd says 1984. So this is one of those movies that, you know, no one really knows, no one really cares. It did have a Wikipedia page. I was kind of surprised to see that.
Yeah.
No actors that I recognized.
Dom Herrera.
What?
Dom Herrera. He's in it.
Who's that?
Where's my phone? He's been in television stuff and a few movies and stuff like that.
Was he one of the Oh, actually, fuck it. I am going to compare this to Sopranos because for some reason we have a gangster family. Never mind.
Yeah, and he's Uncle
Is he
Vinny
one of them?
or whatever, or Cousin Vinny. Who's
okay,
like
the pervert.
Yeah.
One of at least two perverts in the film.
At least.
Okay, so Splitz. You talked about the poster for Sonatine. I'm going to talk about the poster for this. It's a great poster.
It is.
You see that and you think sex comedy, high school, maybe college, is featuring cheerleaders, and it isn't that, but it's just a woman doing the splits, showing cleavage, leaning forward, kind of a killer workout pose, but with pom-poms in her hands. The movie is about a rock band, an all-female rock band in a college. Right off the bat, like one of the first shots of the movie, Hooter College, with a sign that they printed at their local Kinko's. They shot on a college campus, and they couldn't get a better sign than that. It was unbelievable. Yeah. Also worth noting that this film looks like absolute shit on Tubi. Anyways, this is one of the. This makes like my 50 horror movie DVD copy of Night of the Living Dead look like 4K Ultra HD. This looks so bad. And there was a few notes where I have something like, and a bunch of stuff happens that we can't see, especially early in the movie.
Sometimes there's characters talking, and you're not sure which one's talking because you can't really see whose mouth is moving, and you're like,
yeah,
what's happening? Yeah, I'm surprised that Tubi's got this. because if I was Tubi, I would just go out in the back and put their digital copy in the dumpster, or put whatever computer that has that digital copy straight into the dumpster.
Yeah, they OBS'd a VHS tape, I think, is what happened. But yeah, anyways, we follow Chuck, who narrates. He is a sociology major with like some kind of joke about like he's minoring in, or with a focus on like some kind of sex thing. I don't remember, but
yeah,
he's a manager
sexual...
of this. Yeah, who the hell cares? He's a manager of this 3-woman college band, the Splitz, whose characters' names we don't really learn throughout the film. We kind of just, or we learn them, but they almost happen like casually. Like we don't know who they are when they are first introduced. There's the lady with the short hair, with the strong New York accent, the Italian gangster family.
Gina.
She's Gina. Susie's the drummer.
Yeah.
The brunette drummer, and then there's a blonde lead singer who I think plays bass. I think Gina plays guitar, maybe the other way around. But Joan, or Joni, I swear to God we didn't know her name until the basketball scene, which is like the climax of the film.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
right. I mean, I could be wrong because there's a lot of things that like happen in this movie, and I'm like, why are they doing this? Was this mentioned in the last scene? I don't think it was. I felt like I was going insane watching this movie. None of it. I didn't understand it, and it's like this is a dumb sex comedy. Like, what's there to understand? But at the same time, there's so many like plot machinations, and you don't know why any of it's happening.
No, I was wondering as I was watching it. I was like, did whatever company that made this, or
it seems
whatever,
like there's missing scenes.
Yeah, or it seems like they were trying to film like 2 separate movies, like one movie about like an all-girls college or something, and then a movie about an all-girl
That's
rock
a good point.
band.
We don't see whether it's an all-girl college or not. We don't see boys. No, it can't be an all-girl college because Chuck is a student.
Exactly, and then we see a couple nerds, and there's the guy.
Yeah, but they could just be locals. They could be townies.
Yeah, but that guy who coaches them before the wrestling match, he also
but isn't he 40?
He's in class. Yeah, he looks 40.
Yeah, I don't believe they properly establish him as a college student. I'm sure that's the assumption we're supposed to make.
No, he's in a sociology class or something. Because remember when he goes to beat up Chuck in the bathroom, he says, "Why am I doing this?" But it seems like they filmed 2 different movies, and they were like, "Hey, we don't have enough of a story for 2 separate movies. Let's cram them both together and make sure they sort of work."
Yeah, it's a sitcom plot. It's these 3 women are in this college band. I guess it isn't going well. He books them at a club. It's too dark to see how many people are in the audience, quite frankly. There is a moment. There's a moment where like Chuck goes to light a cigarette, and then a guy with like a hook hand, like Buster Bluth, lights it for him, and he's got a fake parrot on his shoulder, and he's like dressed like a pirate for some reason. Yeah. And I think that's to show that this is like a tough bar, but like it's like a fake parrot. It looks like he's just in a costume.
Because there's so many dumb jokes in this movie, and
there's a lot of dumb jokes.
But then even like when he lights a cigarette, he's got the cigarette in his mouth backwards because he's so nervous. But then he asks, instead of for the men's room, he says Wen's
room or something.
Yeah,
and he says it wrong. He fumbles it.
Yeah, and then when the bartender who with the hook hand, Buster throws the knife at the men's room door, the sign is the same way that Chuck pronounced
exactly.
it.
Yeah,
and I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that was like our first indication that this is going to be wacky. I think.
Yes, yeah.
That this wasn't just a comedy, that it was wacky. And I think of kind of like movies like Screwballs and movies like Wacko, which is a slasher parody about a guy with a pumpkin mask, I think. Or maybe I'm mixing up with Jacko, which is not a comedy, but it's about a guy. No, I think it's Wacko, too. He's got a lawnmower in Wacko. But at any rate, at this first performance, this is also when we meet. I didn't write down his character because I thought it was just going to be a one-scene thing, but he ends up being important. But the 45-year-old big tough guy who really wants to date Susie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he asks Susie out while they're performing. He's got World Series tickets somehow, so like
probably a cool guy.
And then she's like, "No, I don't want to go out with you." And then he gets like really angry, and then he's going to go beat up the manager, but then the manager gets him to rethink his life and whatever. But that character comes back. He comes back to continue to perv on Susie, who Warwick. Warwick. Of our 3 band members, we've got Gina, short hair, attractive. Susie, absolutely gorgeous, drummer. And then Joan, kind of the lead singer. I'm torn between Susie and Joan. Who's the more attractive?
You know what? We can cut this if
not that
it
matters.
But
yeah.
I would go with Joan because she's got finer assets.
She's got the cleavage. Yeah, it's interesting. So we see a solid amount of nudity throughout the film. I don't think we ever see it from our main characters, or maybe briefly in the shower. But like most of the nudity is from the villains, which was just kind of odd.
Yeah.
And again, we don't see any nudity until like halfway through the movie. Like if this is a sex comedy, it appears for a while and it might not be that. And again, I saw the PG-13 rating and I'm like, okay, we're just settling in for a boring time. And we still did, but there was some nudity thrown in with that boring time. So like later on, Chuck takes the three girls to the college campus, and it's like sorority rush or whatever. And they're just kind of watching it. And we don't know why they're watching it. And we don't know why any of this is happening. And there's like the cheerleaders. There's a fat girl that runs a sorority, the Phi Beta. And then there's Bernice, who's just kind of like a relatively plain-looking girl that goes and tries to join one of the popular sororities with the cheerleader. And they say no. And then so she joins the Phi Betas, and they have a race for some reason, or it's when the dean pulls up, Dean Hunter, who's a heavy, evil woman. Think like any prison warden from like a Woman in Prison movie. They were definitely doing something like that. She wears an Iron Cross necklace at one point. They're trying to do like a Nazi thing.
What is her is her last name supposed to be in reference to somebody that I don't know? Hunter? Or is it...
No, I felt like it was just Hunter, but they said it in kind of a funny way. They do a Frau Blucher thing a few times where they say her name and stuff happens. There's one time when they say, no, Dean Hunter, and then like flowers immediately die. There's another one where like all the lockers immediately close. They do a few things with that. So yeah, Dean Hunter is like evil, and she... I guess makes them run a race, and Bernice is like winning the race, but then the cheerleader just like takes her out, and so Phi Beta loses the race, and that's the scene. And why is our band interested in this? Why are they watching it? They're not part of the sororities. Why does it care? Why do we care, I should say? And then Dean Hunter has the leaders of the three sororities come in, and the woman who runs the Phi Betas, the heavy woman, I don't remember ever getting her name. They call her Fatso, or like there's a few kind of mean nicknames. I don't. Did we get a character name?
I think we get her name.
We had to have been at one point. Yeah,
I don't know. I'll look for
it. Probably after we get the name of Joan, who's like the main character. It's just terrible. But Dean Hunt is like, okay, we need to get rid of one of you three sororities, and it's like, why? And it's not like an Animal House where it's like, oh, they're the worst sorority or they're the worst fraternity, and I'm facing pressure from the mayor. We have to get rid of them before the homecoming parade. It's nothing like that. It's just like, hey, we just need to get rid of them. And they're going to do an athletic competition, 3 different legs of the athletic competition, notable in that there's no way to have all 3 compete in each 3 because they have soccer.
Yeah.
And there's no establishing that they're doing any kind of round robin. Then they have soccer, and then they have wrestling, then they have basketball. Mm-hmm. And they start with soccer, and this is, again, the girls, the Splitz, are watching it. And this time they actually get involved, and they get involved because, like, so Dean Hunter clearly wants Phi Betas to lose, and she's telling the other sororities, like, be rough with them, cheat, do whatever you need to do. And so they're, like, playing rough in soccer, and they're knocking them out, and then the fat girl gets kind of hurt. And that's when I think Gina's the first to go in.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not going to stand for this.
Yeah, and Gina goes in and just, like, punches one of the women, and then the other 2 members of the Splitz also join, and I guess they're just in the sorority now. Phi Beta lost badly in soccer, but now they've got 3... Like, they've got an all-female rock band to help them out in the future sporting events.
Yeah. One of my favorite jokes in the movie came up in that scene where they're in the dean's office, and she says, there's a lot at stake here, and she pulls down like an infographic of a cow and all the different cuts of steak.
Yeah, but they kind of ruined it because the characters laughed at it. That would have been kind of a fun visual gag. But I know what you mean, and that like she pulls down this like a projector suit, like one of those things that you just pull down. We don't have that in classrooms anymore. But it's like she's like, there's a lot at stake here, and it's just a diagram of different cuts of meat from a cow, and then they laugh, and then she pulls down a second thing. And it's like,
it's so stupid.
There's the makings of a good joke, but I think they kind of lost it too. Meanwhile, Gina has her Italian mafia family, who her father's Vito, and he's like freaking out because she's like 5 minutes late one time, and then Gina brings Chuck to meet them, and Chuck has this narration. He's like, "Oh, I can't wait to have Italian food. I love all food except for fish." And there's some story about how his brother put sardines, like live sardines, in his soup once.
Yeah.
And then they're meeting for dinner, and it's like, "Hey, I hope you like fish." And it's like nothing comes of that. That's just like a scene.
Yeah, though I will say another one of my favorite lines in this movie came from the scene before the race scene, because Gina's 5 minutes late and her father's freaking out, right? And he's got like these two henchmen that work for him. One's named Louis, and he's like nearsighted, and he's got like these Coke bottle glasses. He's like looking out the window, and he's like,
"Oh, I see."
And he's like, "I don't see anybody coming yet." And then the father
gotta look through the blinds, not
at them.
And then so in that same scene, we're introduced to Vinny, who's just this family member, an uncle, cousin, who's just looking at a newspaper, and they accuse him of looking at porn or whatever.
And he is.
And it's like, but it was a newspaper though too.
No,
was
but
it, like,
behind the newspaper,
3?
you could see the magazine
that
he was holding.
Okay, I thought it was like a page 3 situation or something. Anyways, Vinny is kind of important later, because at one point Chuck just meets up with him and is like, "Hey, I hear you have trouble with women." And it's like, was that properly established? He just looked at porn once.
Yeah, no.
I guess the other characters make fun of him for it. But then the scene after that, suddenly he's practicing hypnosis, and I'm like, did I miss something? I swear to God, Chuck did not teach him hypnosis.
Chuck said you should look into hypnosis.
Oh, he told him to look into it. Okay, it's so weird and stupid. But yeah, so the next event is wrestling. And the Phi Betas are starting to play dirty. They're starting to engage in psychological warfare on the other teams. And this psychological warfare, I didn't understand it one bit, but they pull out like red panties, and they're talking about like, "Oh, I can't believe they have to wear these" or something. But then they're referring to the other teams, but then the teams do wear them, and it's, "Oh, no, I see," because they changed the rules.
Yeah. So
okay, so they go into the dean and demand that we're going to change the rules, and is that because they blackmail? Yeah, that's where
which
the
is
blackmail
the whole
comes
dumb
in.
scene. They were like, "Hey, how are we going to get ahead? Well, we have to blackmail the dean. Let's go to her husband's dental office."
Yeah,
and who is, by the way, is already fucked up on laughing gas and a doobie.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Let's get him even more fucked up, and then make him wear women's clothes and take photos of him."
Take compromising photos of him, and it's Susie and I don't remember if it's Gina or Joan. It was only the other one was probably,
I think it's Joan.
So, and then they use that, and so it's like, okay, we demand that we change some of the rules, or we get to determine the rules. And Dean's like, okay with that, but then she says to the other sororities, "But you guys still, they may have changed the rules, but you guys can still fight dirty, like, you know." Mm-hmm. I guess the other teams have to wear lingerie in the wrestling thing. And one of the girls from the other sorority, they unfasten her bra and then fasten it around one of the ropes, because they fight in like a traditional boxing ring. And when she runs forward to go continue wrestling, that's when her top comes off, and that's that. The Phi Betas win that, I guess. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, because they pinned her. But even though there's two people wrestling, they were like tagging in and out. And then she's so embarrassed about people seeing her tits that she lays on the wrestling mat. And then the heavier girl from Phi Beta lays on top. And
yeah, great movie. And then,
do you like this movie, Patrick?
No, no, of course not. Oh. And so in the meantime, Vinny's using hypnosis to pick up chicks for some reason, and we've got this basketball game coming up. The rules are it's strip basketball. So if we make a basket, you take off an article of clothing, and they go player by player, I guess, because there's an unequal amount of, some girls are topless, some are wearing shirts, on the same team. But, and this is mentioned in one line of narration, it's like, oh, we're going to be safe because Joni was like a high school basketball star. I think that's when we learn her name.
Yeah.
But the other girls lock her in the locker room. And so they're getting killed. They're down like 18-0 at halftime or something. And Susie and Warwick notice cigarette smoke coming out of the vent, and it's like Morse code saying trapped in locker room or whatever. So then Warwick goes and gets Joni out. And so then Joni comes in, and she starts making every basket. I thought it was hilarious that absolutely no one looked like they knew what they were doing. It looked like they knew even how to dribble. You couldn't find one person.
I'm not even that good at basketball. Like, I'm terrible, but I at least know how to dribble.
Yeah, it was bad. It was ugly. Like, I'm okay with wrestling looking ugly because it's just like you're kind of just flailing around and falling on people. And the soccer didn't look that bad. There was a few nice headers. Mm-hmm. Every angle of the goal. I mean, this is acceptable, but every angle of the Phi Beta goalie either getting a save or letting a ball get past her was shot in like the same angle. She was in the same exact spot each time. I bet it seems like they just kept the camera rolling
in the air each time she missed.
It seems like they kept the camera rolling and just kicked the ball at her or past her like 20 times in a row and just took those shots. But that's fine because it's like Phi Beta flailing. Here, we're supposed to see Phi Beta getting dominated by this other team, but they don't look like they know what they're doing. And then when Joni's in, Joni starts dominating, but again, she doesn't look like she knows what she's doing. It's a tie game with like 10 seconds left, and they're doing a tip-off from center court for some reason. That's generally not what you do late in the fourth quarter. But they go and tackle Joni, but the ball kind of finds its way to the fat girl. And they're like, shoot it. And she's like, I don't want to, not me. And then she eventually shoots it. And it's a Kawhi Leonard shot where it's kind of just hangs around the rim and it eventually goes in. So they win. So that's that. Like the Phi Betas win, but then the dean is still going to kick out that sorority and she's going to expel Chuck. I don't remember the reasoning.
She's okay with the sorority winning, but she's going to expel Chuck and the band members because they all helped Phi Beta win. And
then Chuck was on full scholarship, by the way, not that that's important, but he goes up to Vinny and he's like, hey, I got expelled, I need your help. And so Vinny hypnotizes the dean, I guess in an attempt to let them back in, and this is where I stopped caring long ago. This is where I stopped paying attention. But at some point we get to a scene at a nice restaurant, and the dean is out there singing in like a torch singer outfit.
Chuck and the girls somehow, because of Vinny and the mob family, they get a gig at like the hottest club in town.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, the dean is there introducing the band, and there's like a bunch of people on like the school board or like staff there.
And the mafia's out there in the eating dinner.
Yeah. But yeah, and then she gets hypnotized to open her jacket and reveal this gaudy red lingerie or something. She starts singing like this kind of burlesque song.
Yeah.
And then she comes to and she hurries herself off the stage because she's embarrassed.
Yeah, and then the band performs, and I guess it goes well, and then you just have the scene of Chuck talking to Vinny, and then the other mafia guys come up, and he's like, I'm going to make so much, and then the mafia looks at him, and this is Gina's dad, and he's like, I'm going to make barely anything at all, but these girls are going to be so successful, and it's like, okay, what's the point of any of this? And then the movie kind of ends, and you're like, what's the point of any of this? So, Jim, what did you think of Splitz?
It was a fucking awful movie. I don't know if it was as bad as Screwballs. It was just terrible. It made no sense. It seemed like there were scenes missing, which we spoke about earlier, because I'm sure there were. I
wouldn't say I'm sure there were, but I mean, it does feel like that, sure.
Yeah, and it was just shit. There's no other way to describe it. It was a terrible movie that made no sense. The posters severely misleading. Yeah, what is it? Is it a sex comedy? Well, there's no sex. There's a bit of nudity. You know, is it a
there wasn't a ton of nudity for a movie like this. Yeah.
No, is it a college romp? Barely.
Sure.
Because it's
it is. It's just not a funny one. But yeah, I mean that's what it is.
Look, if you think we don't even see the inside of a classroom at this school.
No, that's true. But like, here's the thing: if this is a story about an all-girl college band, it really isn't, because I think they performed twice.
Mm-hmm. a couple times. They have a song that I really like where they go to a
yeah,
diner.
the songs
like
were good,
Midnight.
and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I'm not 100% sure, and I do hesitate because at least one of the actresses that played the band members, I looked her up on IMDb, and it listed like actress and soundtrack, so maybe she did actually sing, but it felt like Slumber Party Massacre 2, where they just took existing songs and had the characters sing, you mime them. Also, worth noting, we did not say this, this film has a good soundtrack. Regardless of the songs that the girls perform, they get 2 fucking Blondie songs in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
What?
Which I'm surprised.
Where they get One Way or Another plays during the basketball scene, and in A Heart of Glass, I think they play earlier.
Mm-hmm. And they've also got...
You get some Del Shannon in there.
And
Suburban
I like
to
Nights?
think
I don't know is that an actual
I like to
song?
think that... I don't know. I like to think that Del Shannon was exactly what he was thinking of when he recorded that song, was a middle-aged, lanky, bald man wearing women's clothing and being chased around a dental office by a woman dressed as toothpaste. I like to think that's exactly what was on their mind when they were recording those classic tunes. But yeah, a legitimately good soundtrack for whatever that's worth. There's some Bonnie Tyler in there too. Yeah,
it's bizarre how they must not have gotten the rights for this music, right? Like, there's no way they must have.
The Blondie is the weird one because this is like Blondie is one of the biggest bands in the world at this point.
Yeah, so maybe they just
I
stole
have no
it,
idea.
You know,
it's possible. I wouldn't rule it past these guys.
Yeah, and then nobody watched this movie, so it just flew under everybody's radar.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's so. Legitimate good soundtrack, that's a point in the movie's favor, whether they stole it or not. That makes the movie more enjoyable than it would have been. It's still not an enjoyable movie. It's not particularly funny. The comedy going for wacky, I think, is really where it's not funny. It's like they toned it down a bit. Like, they tried to do these like airplane type jokes, and it almost exclusively doesn't work. But the biggest problem, I mean, normally you would say the biggest problem with a comedy, if it's not good, is it's like, oh, it's not funny. Like, how do you come back from that? And like, yeah, that's ultimately, Splitz isn't very funny. There's a few moments. But the biggest problem for me as just a viewer of this film was that at no point in the movie did I know why any character was doing what they were doing. Why is Chuck coaching Vinny to hypnotize women? Why is Vinny hypnotizing women even a subplot? Why do we care? Why? It's a little bit, when in the moment when Gina hops onto the soccer field, it's a little, you kind of get it because she just feels bad that there's these underdogs are just getting pushed around, but
why are they
why
even
were
there?
they taking that interest to begin with? Yes. Why is Dean Hunter so intent on kicking out one sorority? Like, again, if it were like an Animal House situation where like nothing good came of these students, I would get it. Why? Just why? I don't understand why anyone is doing anything that they're doing. Yeah, why is that one guy, is he a dentist? Why is he even at the dental? Like, why is he just lighting up a joint?
Yeah, and he is a dentist. And why is he wearing a Hawaiian shirt? Why is he there after
hours?
Well,
the Hawaiian, anyone can wear a Hawaiian shirt. Okay, I mean, that's...
Yeah, I wear them exclusively in the summer. That's all I wear in the summer. But, they're also, even the first scene of this movie, you have Chuck driving around, and he goes into, like, this random guy's apartment, who's like...
Why does Chuck narrate the movie? He's like... Chuck, like, disappears for, like, 2/3 of the movie. He's, like, not a character.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we set him up as the main character? Why aren't we just following the girls to begin with?
Yeah, why do they need a manager? Why is there this him needing to become a band manager and a successful band manager subplot? Why does that exist? Why do the women have to be in a band? How come? That's why I think it was like 2
Well, because
movies.
that could be your movie. You could just have a movie about a couple of college girls, kind of sexy college girls, like in a rock band. Like you could make a movie out of that. What's that?
I said like the Hex Girls.
What's that?
Scooby-Doo. I've got a crush on the Hex Girls since I was a kid. Yeah. But that's why I think this movie was born out of like at least 2 different movies. One movie about an all-girl band, an all-girls college band, and then another movie about sororities going at it at school.
Yeah, and again, it feels like when you throw the nudity in there, we see the nudity in the wrestling scene. We see it in the basketball scene because they're, it's strip basketball. We see after one of the victories, I assume it's the wrestling one, not the basketball one, because that's like the end of the movie, but we see the Phi Betas all kind of showering together. There's some nudity there. I'm not going to say like, oh, there needed to be more nudity, but it seemed like that's an angle to sell this movie on. It's a sex comedy about a couple of sororities, and they're always topless, and they're competing over this thing, and it's like an underdog story about the not super attractive one. It's led by the fat girl, and there's that Bernice who looks like plain as hell, and it's like, and then they're going up against these like perfect sexy ones, except one of them's wearing the terrible looking 80s glasses, which makes her look like a grandma. And I don't know, they missed the mark if that's what they were going for.
Which is also interesting because at this point in time, college movies, especially college movies that are full of tits, were making a fair amount of money, right? And they were making lots of knockoffs. There's definitely
Animal House influence here. The way this movie opened reminded me of Animal House a lot. Like Chuck narrating. Animal House, I think, opens with narration, doesn't it? I think it's Tim Matheson.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, this felt like there was an Animal House thing. And again, the sorority, it's fraternities in Animal House, but this felt like a girls' Animal House, except Animal House has that underdog element, but the point of Animal House is those guys should be kicked out. They're terrible people, and that's kind of the fun of that. And it's like this, we don't really get a chance to know the Phi Betas. We sort of know the rock band.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I didn't even remember Fatso's name. If they mention it, they probably do. And then there's Bernice. No one else in that sorority is named.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. It's almost like the production company or whoever, they were like, hey, how do we make a quick buck? We got to cash in on this Animal House craze that's carried over from when? The late 70s, I guess.
People are out there making King Frat. There's a few Animal House ripoffs out there in the early 80s.
Even like I guess what was the police movies?
Lethal Weapon?
No, where they're trying to become police officers.
Police Academy.
Academy.
I knew what you meant. Yeah.
Thank you, you prick. But yeah, like even like Police Academy even did it better with less nudity and a better story. You know what I mean? Like, but they're still aping off that same theme, that same Animal House-esque movie.
I haven't seen Police Academy, any of them, so I can't really speak to that. But you're probably right.
Yeah,
this movie didn't get 6 sequels or however many Police Academy did.
No, exactly, and I'm just confused about the whole movie. And I mean, if you want to, because I'm pretty much done with covering this movie, but if you wanna get into like comparing our two films,
well, we don't even necessarily have to compare, but just which of the two do you prefer? Do you prefer Sonatine, this thoughtful, artfully made yakuza drama, or Splitz, a sex comedy that doesn't know what it's doing for the majority of the film? Which do you prefer?
I think I can answer for the both of us, Sonatine. But it's interesting, I was going to say, it's really interesting that you have Sonatine where you have like a lot of scenes that don't really flow into each other, and lots of things just kind of happen. And you also get that with Splitz. But with Sonatine, you have
seems less purposeful.
Yeah, and with Sonatine, you have a cohesive story that's being told, and you at least understand that the overarching themes of the movie, even with these scenes that don't really fit together perfectly. And then you have a movie where their scenes don't fit together and there is no fucking story. And you're just left being confused by everything because none of it makes sense.
Yeah, I've increasingly over time I've given you a hard time for saying things are confusing. I get it with Splits. I actually would get it. I don't think you outright said Sonatine's confusing. I would get it with that. I would describe Sonatine as confusing just because.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah,
it's so like the movie takes a break for half of the movie. I mean, that's like a weird, but again, it feels deliberate. It feels like the movie's trying to do something. I just wasn't 100% sure what it was trying to do. Splits. I have a vague sense of what they were trying to do. They were just trying to make a cheap sex comedy cash in, but the character motivations are confusing, and the story is so dumb that it just doesn't work. Sonatine's clearly the better film. Shouldn't be controversial. Are we the first people? I mean, we can't be, but are we the first people to have watched Splitz on Tubi?
You know
Let me look at this, because I'm going to look at my...
Is there a view counter on Tubi?
I have a good variety of connections on Letterboxd, to the point where, like, it feels like if I watch any movie, at least someone I'm connected to has seen it. So let me look at who has seen Splitz. Okay, 4 of my connections have watched it. The highest rating is 3 stars, so 6 out of 10.
Who gave
Lowest
it that?
rating is the name is Rich Trash, which seems appropriate, but yeah, no, it's so some people have seen it. So, and again, if you don't see this on Tubi, I don't know where the fuck you're seeing it. So yeah, it's an obscure film. It's not a complete unknown. But
it should be.
There's no reason to see it, really. There's no, like, not that you're looking for, like, name recognition in a movie like this, but sometimes you watch, like, a stupid sex comedy and there's, like, a B-movie star in it or something, and it's like, I didn't even know who these people were. Not that it would have made it all that much more enjoyable, but, like, I mean, just like let's throw Dr. Alien out there, which we've talked about. Like, we enjoy Dr. Alien. It's
great
directed by David Dakota, who had his moments in the 80s and 90s of making relative quality films, but that's got, in relatively small roles, that's got Linnea Quigley, Ginger Lynn, Michelle Bauer. It's like there's some B-movie star power there where you can kind of watch it for them, even if they're not a big part of the movie. This, nothing like that. There's really no reason to see it.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Patrick.
So, Jim, what do you think of these 2 films as a drive-in double feature?
Oh, I think it worked perfectly. Yeah, no, it's great. And that was sarcasm. No, doesn't work at all.
Well, it is interesting. I did say Sonatine felt like a movie that was too smart for me, and I definitely feel too smart for Splitz, but that doesn't make for a good double feature. It's just, other than we never quite know why the characters do what they do, and again, that feels purposeful in Sonatine, and in Splitz, it's just like, are they missing scenes? Is it just poorly written? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comparison between.
But yeah, it's a bad double feature, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
it's bad.
Would you even call, like, Sonatine an artful movie? I think it's very artful.
I would, and we had this debate about Battles Without Honor and Humanity, if that even belongs on our podcast. Is it a drive-in movie? And I'm going to say Sonatine is a drive-in movie, even less than that. But this is the thing. If I don't know the films, they're on the list for a reason. I saw Sonatine is regarded on some list as the second greatest yakuza film ever made, behind only the original Battles Without Honor and Humanity. Don't know if I'd quite go that far not that I've seen a ton. But listen, if I've never seen the film, we're going to pick some duds like Splitz. We should want to pick some duds. I mean, we have to mix it up. And Sonatine's not a dud. It's just not really the type of film we're looking for generally. But it is a good film.
It is, and it gave me a wistful feeling. It made me very relaxed. I don't know. So hey, if you want to be relaxed, audience, maybe give Sonatine a watch. It's nice.
As relaxed as you'll ever feel watching an existentialist gangster drama.
Yeah, it was a good movie. I'm gonna watch it again, I think.
Will you be watching it for next episode? Well, obviously not.
Oh.
But our next episode is going to be featuring 2 horror movies that would have been better as our Halloween episode, so, sorry about that. But we've got George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead and the 1990 Claudio Fragasso, Bruno Mattei film Night Killer, featured on Red Letter Media's Best of the Worst program. Also featured on the Bad Movie Bible's Nightmare on Elm Street ripoffs episode. Yeah, it's about a guy that wears a giant... It's a weird movie. You'll have to see it. But yeah, that's...
Well, I have seen Dawn of the Dead, so I've seen one of them.
Sure. But yeah, that's what we've got next time. So please stay tuned. Please check us out on YouTube. We're doing some stuff that isn't necessarily featured on the podcast ends up there, and a lot of stuff obviously that does. And check us out on Patreon if you enjoy what you hear. There are free trials available, and there's also access to extended cuts of episodes, early access to episodes, and then, of course, our world-famous commentary tracks are released roughly monthly on films that oftentimes haven't yet been featured on the podcast, sometimes never will be. We're never going to do the Lord of the Rings movies on the podcast. We've done a commentary track for a couple of those. So,
I know. We did Helm's Deep about a month ago, didn't we? Or did Two Towers. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Idiot.
We did the Attack of the Wards.
Yeah.
Just naming random things that happen in the movie. But yeah, thanks for joining me, Jim. This was a lot more fun than watching Splitz was.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for having me, buddy. And thanks for listening,
I'm looking
audience.
forward to next time. Yeah.